Hello everyone. Now that we've successfully escorted Telma, Illia, and Prince Ralis to Kakariko Village, the next scene takes place within the abandoned Eldahin Hotel, which they are using to keep Prince Ralis until he recovers. Renato has now treated him, and he comes out and explains that the worst is now over, and now all they have to do is wait. He goes on to ask Link what happened to the boy's mother, and as you'll know from the previous chapter, Queen Rutela was actually killed by the Shadow Beings and executed while Prince Ralis was away. Renato mentions that the prince constantly asks after her in a delirious state, and that he can tell from the look on Link's face when he asked that the knowledge grieves him. Colin then offers to look after Prince Ralis until the Zora child recovers, and the shaman will then thank him. Next we see Luda and Illia talking in the distance as they are looking after Prince Ralis, but we can't actually hear what they're saying because they're too far away. And I like the music here. It's like the Twilight Princess theme song, but it's all slow and peaceful. It's nice. The next scene takes place just outside, where Renato and Colin, Link and Telma are hanging out just outside the door. Colin asks Link if it's really true that Illia lost her memory and doesn't remember anyone. Renato will assure Colin that she has indeed, and that regaining her memory will be no simple task. He goes on to say that everything will be alright if given enough time, and she will eventually find her heart again. He goes on to ask Colin if the boy will stay in Kakariko Village until Illia is back to normal, so that he can continue to support her, and I suppose Prince Ralis as well. Colin will then grin and run off, and I suppose that means he agrees. Renato himself will then bow to the two remaining characters and depart. Now, Telma she plays a big role later on in the story, as you'll come to find out, to point us in the right direction of the locations of the upcoming temples in the game. Telma smiles at Link and says that she is glad that everything worked out in the end, and that there's still hope to be found. After a moment of considering, she then asks Link if he would be willing to put his skills to use in aiding in the effort to save Hyrule. It turns out that Telma is part of a group of people who are working to do right in Hyrule and do what they can to set things straight while everything around them is falling apart. I suppose that's necessary, considering the Hylian soldiers themselves are pretty useless. She then shakes Link's hand and officially introduces herself, telling Link to call her by her first name. Because Link doesn't talk, I don't think she needs to worry about that. She goes on to say that she needs to return to Hyrule Castle, but she worries after Illia. She also makes the vague comment that there's something else that makes her want to stay, and then she glances after Renato, who is disappearing. Telma then gets in Link's face and tells him to come see her sometime in Castletown. She explains that her bar is like a safe house to her and her friends, meaning the group of people that are fighting to save Hyrule. She also says there's a hidden passageway which leads to Hyrule Castle itself, and this will be important later on in the game, so lock that away in your memory from now, because that will become very important here soon. With one last typical if you need anything parting, she will then wink at you one last time before running off to catch up with Renato. I suppose there's some sort of relationship between them? It appears Telma has an interest anyway. Link will begin walking back towards the Elde Hotel, but stops short of the door and turns around slowly. After looking up, he sees our old ghosty friend, the Zora Queen, Rutela, who drifts off into the distance silently, apparently beckoning our hero to follow. Ooh, spooky. Once you regain control of Link, you simply want to go south and follow the spirit of Queen Rutela, who leads you into the Kakariko graveyard. The song here, Queen Rutela's theme, is a remixed version of the Serenade of Water from the Ocarina of Time. It's a fitting song for the Zoras, and it's very peaceful and soothing and just a really nice song. It's kind of repetitive though. If you remember from the previous chapter, we saw her ghost as a wolf, and she told you that if you could help her son, she would grant you the ability to swim and breathe under very deep water. Rutela is keeping her promise and leading us to an item that will grant us that very ability. Follow her to the back of the graveyard, and she'll lead you to a stone in the back here that has a symbol of the Zoras upon it. It pulses with a blue light a few times before it disappears, revealing a hole that we can crawl through. Do so to emerge into a new portion of the graveyard, which also fills up our map a little bit more. Apparently the Zoras consider this graveyard to be a sacred place where they can lay their dead to rest. There's actually a boulder off to the side that leads to Lake Hylia. It doesn't really make much sense to me, considering it's kind of on the opposite side of Hyrule, but anyway, that's probably how the Zoras get back here. As you enter this sacred area, you'll see a scene showing a fancy grave on the other side, along with some fancy turquoise lights, and Queen Rutela is hovering over it. Jump into the water and get over there, and you'll notice that there aren't actually any other graves in this area or under the water, so apparently they only bury their royalty here, or the royal family of the Zoras are the only ones that actually get gravestones. Once you climb up here on the opposite platform, Rutela will tell you that she is deeply grateful for helping her in her time of need. She explains that this is the resting place of her dead husband, King Zora, and that it is no coincidence that her son found help in this village. The screen then moves down to show the fancy grave beneath her, which she says is the grave of her dead husband, who created the garments specifically for the chosen hero, enabling him to have the abilities of the Zora tribe. And real quick, here's my theory on this. I don't think that this King Zora actually made these garments for this particular chosen hero, but that he made them for a Link from a previous Zelda title. But I'll explain more about that in just a moment. Link will then acquire the Zora Armor, which looks a lot cooler in this game. Queen Rutela then tells you that she can at last join her husband in slumber, and that Link should pass on this knowledge to her son, who still knows nothing of her death. She then asks you to tell him not to grieve her passing, but to be brave and lead her people. She also says that she loves him very deeply. This actually comes into play later when Prince Ralis wakes up and we get a chance to tell him what happened. This will happen in several chapters soon, so just keep that in mind for now, because we will have to inform Prince Ralis of this later. Midna will then appear at last, and once again she enforces the fact that we're looking for the final piece of Fused Shadow, since Midna's a little single-minded, encouraging us once again to enter the next temple, which is at the bottom of Lake Hylia. There's actually one more thing that we need to do before we can even enter the temple, which we are about to go do here in a moment. Midna goes on to say that Farron told us that we need to collect the Fused Shadow in order to match the dark powers of Zant and keep all these tragedies that have befallen Hyrule from happening all over again. And just a cool little tidbit for you guys, King Zora is the same one who gave Link the Zora tunic back in Ocarina of Time, so it's entirely possible that this is the same King Zora, who is now dead, who gave us this same outfit to the hero of Ocarina of Time wore back in that game. Trippy, no, so we're actually wearing the exact same tunic. It wouldn't surprise me if that's the case, because we already have another example of this happening in this game in the Hero's Bow, which we got in the Goron Mines, which was said to be left behind by a chosen hero from another Zelda title. Interestingly enough, Ocarina of Time did not have a Hero's Bow, but the direct sequel, Majora's Mask, did. Because both games took place before Twilight Princess, these items are most likely, once again, another connection to those two games. Okay, so subject changing back to our quest. If you remember from earlier, when we were crossing the Great Bridge of Hylia, the postman delivered a letter from Barnes. It informed us that he now has a new type of bomb available that works underwater. As common sense and knowledge of previous Zelda titles will tell you, bombs do not normally explode underwater, and because the next dungeon is kind of underwater, it kind of makes sense that we'll probably need these bombs in the near future. Quite convenient that Barnes now has these new bombs available, huh? With all that being said, you want to head into Barnes' shop in Kakariko Village, and he has two counters, one for buying and one for selling. Why does he need two separate counters anyways? Maybe he's just one of those people that really has to have things a certain way and he's real particular? Anyway, you want to talk to him on the left counter to sell back bombs. We now have two bomb bags, one that we bought from Barnes and one that we were rewarded with for helping Izza in Upper Zora's River. Empty out one of them by selling the bombs to Barnes and leave the other one filled with regular bombs. Now you want to walk over to the other counter, which is on the right, and purchase water bombs, which will fill up the bomb bag that we just emptied. These new fish-looking bombs will work just like regular ones, but they can be used underwater. The only downside is that they're a tad bit more expensive and they take up more room in your bomb bags. You can only hold so much of this type in a bomb bag as compared to regular bombs. So now that we have these, that's all that's really necessary, and so we are ready to head to Lake Hylia. If you would like to take a shortcut from here to get to the temple, you can actually hop in the water in the back portion of the graveyard. You crawl back through that hole and go to where King Zora's grave is located, and there's actually a boulder under the water off to the right side, and you can hop down there and you can blow it up using our water bombs, and there's a shortcut that leads all the way to Lake Hylia. It just like teleports you there. Crazy, huh? However, if you would like to get 2 more bomb bag upgrades and such, real quick, you can follow along with me where I am heading to Zora's domain. There's 2 cool things we can do real quick. Unfortunately, that's all the way on the opposite side of Hyrule, as lame as that is, and because we can't transform into a wolf to use the warp portals that we've unlocked thus far, we're going to have to travel by land. To make this a little bit faster, you can go ahead and blow on the horse grass that is near the Elden Spring in Kakariko Village in order to summon Epona. This makes our journey a little bit faster, but it still takes some time. Like I say, if you don't want to do this next side quest thing, you can go ahead and skip to the bottom of Lake Hylia and go enter the temple now. Since all we really need to enter the temple is the Zora Armor and the water bombs, which now we already have. The rest of this video is simply me riding Epona all the way back to Zora's domain. Lame. So you can feel free to skip ahead to the next video where I will meet up with you guys. So that concludes this video, and I will see you guys in just a moment.